This is an ethnic map of Africa. It has all the different ethnic groups where they tend to live, from the Zulus in South Africa, the Igbo in Nigeria, and so on across the whole continent. And if you look closely, you will also see these black lines, which are the national country borders. Those black lines represent a European map of colonialism that was imposed on the ethnic map of Africa. Now, that European colonial map of Africa took no account of the ethnic layout of Africa, resulting in conflicts across the continent that persist to this day. For example, Germany swapped the island of Zanzibar for the Caprivi Strip in what is now Namibia so that they could get access to the Zambezi River. As a result, the Lozi people of the Caprivi Strip have been struggling to get independence from Namibia ever since. There is so much wrong with this idiotic tweet that it's hard to actually capture it all in one video. But first of all, those white countries are not white countries, they are ethnically diverse countries. And they are ethnically diverse because of colonialism, because of people going to other countries from Europe, and also as a result of colonialism, people from other countries coming to Europe.
Grand Rising Kings and Queens, welcome back to my YouTube space. I love you all and thank you so much for being here. Thank you for always showing up and thank you for walking this journey of truth with me. Now, family, today I want to react on something. There's a tweet here and there's a white speaker who reacted on that tweet. I just want to react overall on it because it is showing us or telling us the hidden history of white people or white systems. I want to say this because on the videos that I'm going to play on you, it's from white people. And these white people are trying to tell us how the white system has played the world, or the white system has played black people. What I'm going to do here, I want you to watch these clips first. After watching these clips first, we'll come back here and talk something about history. I love going back to history and supporting my documents or supporting my narrative with the history. Let's listen to these clips and then we talk about something.
This racist tweet by a British politician has some very interesting wording. This is Ashley Simon of Britain First, and she says, "Can anyone explain why is it only white countries that are told they must be racially diverse?" That's an interesting choice of wording there, babe. Well, why do you say white countries? Why not European countries? I know the answer to this, because if you say white countries, you can also include Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand, countries that, surprisingly, were actually not always white. In fact, they were originally inhabited by native peoples like the Sioux, the Cherokee, the Inuit, the Aboriginals, the Maoris, and they weren't told to be ethnically diverse. No, they had ethnic diversity forced upon them at the point of a gun by Europeans. So where are the most ethnically diverse countries in the world today? Is it America? Is it the UK? Australia? Is it all those white countries that Ashley Simon's talking about? No. Lots of organizations collect statistics on this, but all of them agree that most of the most ethnically diverse countries in the world are here in Africa. And why is that? Well, this is an ethnic map of Africa. It has all the different ethnic groups where they tend to live, from the Zulus in South Africa, the Igbo in Nigeria, and so on across the whole continent. And if you look closely, you will also see these black lines, which are the national country borders. Those black lines represent a European map of colonialism that was imposed on the ethnic map of Africa. Now, that European colonial map of Africa took no account of the ethnic layout of Africa, resulting in conflicts across the continent that persist to this day. For example, Germany swapped the island of Zanzibar for the Caprivi Strip in what is now Namibia so that they could get access to the Zambezi River. As a result, the Lozi people of the Caprivi Strip have been struggling to get independence from Namibia ever since. There is so much wrong with this idiotic tweet that it's hard to actually capture it all in one video. But first of all, those white countries are not white countries, they are ethnically diverse countries. And they are ethnically diverse because of colonialism, because of people going to other countries from Europe, and also as a result of colonialism, people from other countries coming to Europe. But also, it is not only those so-called white countries that are ethnically diverse. The most ethnically diverse countries in the world are all in Africa, and that is a direct result of having ethnic diversity forced upon them by Europeans. So if Ashley Simon wants to know why ethnic diversity exists in countries all across the world, she doesn't need to post stupid tweets. She needs to look in the mirror.
After World War I, American soldiers came home really proud of the work they had done to combat fascism in Europe and, save the world for democracy. And Black Americans came home the same way. They were proud of their uniforms, and they had earned honor through their sacrifice and their courage. They came home to a wave of racial terror. The year 1919 was named the Red Summer. White mobs attacked black people in cities across the United States. You won't be surprised to learn that it was started because a white woman accused a black man of assaulting her. But that was just a spark in the kindling of what was already going on in the nation. In Chicago, there was a 13-day riot that left 38 people dead, men, women, children, and over 500 injured. In Washington, D.C., there were these white mobs that included off-duty soldiers and police attacking black residents for several days. And in Elaine, Arkansas, somewhere between 100 and 200 black sharecroppers and their families were slaughtered after organizing for fair wages. In fact, in Chicago, they drowned a black teenager named Eugene Williams for drifting over into a whites-only swimming area. When black residents defended themselves from these attacks, which was unusual because they had been so threatened before that they didn't often fight back in the days before the First World War. When they defended themselves, the police arrested them instead of the attackers. The killers were not punished. The court sentenced 12 black men to death instead. During the 20s and 30s, black farmers were pushed off their land. Sometimes they were forced to sign over the deeds to their property, and like a white mob would show up at their property and say, get out of town by sundown, and if you're not out of town, we'll kill you, we'll burn your property. Banks refused to give loans to the black community because all black people were too risky. Entire black communities lost land that their family had worked for since they were freed from chattel slavery, had no protection. The laws were not there to protect them. Then the Great Depression hit. My family was made up of poor white people in Kansas and Oklahoma. They suffered, but they got the New Deal. They got Social Security. They got things that black families were locked out of. Social Security was not available to agricultural and domestic workers. Now, who do you think the majority of agricultural and domestic workers were? They were black people. The Federal Housing Administration wouldn't back mortgages for black families in black neighborhoods. This created the redlining maps that still shape our cities today. In the book 1984, George Orwell said, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." White people, I'm asking you to do one thing. Share the information that I'm posting with one other white person so that the truth can regain control of the narrative.
Their bodies weren't discovered for 7 weeks after they were murdered. I'm back with another episode of White Black History, things that they don't teach you in school, so we have to learn it here. In June of 1964, 3 men were murdered. 2 were white, 1 was black, in a place called Philadelphia, Mississippi. Now, if you've seen the 1988 movie Mississippi Burning, it's loosely based on some of the events that occurred in this time frame, but not completely. So we're going to talk about what actually happened. It's something known as the Freedom Summer Murders, or the Mississippi Burning Murders. These men were members of the Council of Federated Organization, as well as the Congress of Racial Equality. They had been working with the Freedom Summer campaign in order to get African Americans registered to vote in places where they weren't currently registered. They were in town to meet with members of a black congregation from a church that was burnt to the ground. They were arrested for speeding, taken to jail, well, technically escorted to jail. Once they were in jail, they were held for hours. They were ultimately released, and then they were followed by members of the sheriff's department and other people. Not only were they followed, they were abducted after that. The 2 white men were shot in the heart. The black man was shot 3 times, beaten severely before being castrated. Not only that, they buried all 3 nearby. Now, the FBI was called in, local and government authorities as well, but 400 sailors from the Navy were also called in. There was a nearby military base where they had these men come out and help search the lakes, search the fields, search the nearby surrounding areas. Now, initially, they looked at this as a missing persons case until they found their burnt car in a nearby marsh. When the FBI decided to investigate it, not only were the local sheriff's department and local police departments involved, but members of the Klan. some of this had some severe overlap. Local governments shockingly did not want to prosecute, right? They didn't go after these people. They actually fought prosecution repeatedly in multiple attempts. The federal government actually stepped in 1967, had 18 people arrested. They were charged with civil rights violations. 7 of those people were convicted, 1 pled guilty, and the rest all received extremely small sentences. While they were searching for these people, they found 8 additional bodies. One was a 14-year-old boy, 5 of which they've never been able to identify. 41 years after this, 1 man also was found guilty in the state of Mississippi. He was tried and then he was charged with 60 years. He ultimately didn't make it out of the prison, and in 2018 he kicked the bucket. Now, you might be wondering why I chose to film this here. Often in my comments I see or hear things like, that was so far away, or it's so long ago, and it's truly not. The racists are still here. Now you might be wondering why I chose to film this here. To be honest, I often hear in my comments of my videos that that's so far away or that's so long ago, and it's truly not. It's less than a grandparent away. For some of us, it's an actual parent's distance. The racists are still here.
Welcome back. You have heard the reaction. You have heard what this white man is saying. I have the first speaker, the second speaker, all talking about the history, what was hidden from black people, or the history of black people. And this is one of the things that maybe the white system don't want it to be out. But especially here, it's coming from their own. I'm so happy to talk about it. First of all, the tweet that was being reacted is about a politician tweeted that someone to explain, or I will quote, can anyone explain why is it only white countries that are told they must be racially diverse, or they must be talking about diversity? Now, family. That phrase, white countries, is the whole game. You have heard the reaction of the white man. But for me, I'll say this. That is the key phrase that tells you exactly what's going on in the mind and in the political agenda. Because if she truly meant European countries, she would have said European countries. But she didn't. She said white countries. Why? Because in her mind, and in the mind of so many people like her, white countries doesn't just mean Europe. It means Canada, it means United States, it means Australia, it means New Zealand. It means lands that are nowhere near Europe geographically, but which has been claimed, settled, and painted white through centuries of colonization. And here's the truth that they don't want, or they don't like to face. None of those countries were originally white. None of them, not even one. Before the British flag ever touched North America, it was home of the slugs, or home to the slugs, the Cherokee, the Apache, the Iroquois. I know you have learned this in history. Before Australia was turned into a penal colony, it was the land of the Aboriginal peoples who had lived there for tens of thousands of years. Before New Zealand was carved up for European settlers, it was the home of Maori, warriors, navigators, farmers, and poets of the Pacific. Before Canada was mapped in French and English, it was home of the First Nations people, the Inuit and the Métis. Now, and these indigenous people were not told to be diverse. No one held a friendly diversity seminar and said, hey, you should have more ethnic representations. No. Diversity, or rather forced mixing, it came to them at a point of a gun. The mixing and it was at a gunpoint. So through massacres, through land grabs, through diseases intentionally spread, through the kidnapping of children, and through policies designed to erase their languages, their beliefs, and their very existence. Okay? So we need to know this. We have the stolen house anatomy, or analogy. We have the stolen house analogy. This is why when I hear white politicians crying about protecting white countries, I can't help but see the ridiculous on it. Okay? Now, it's like someone stealing your house, painting it their favorite color, living in for a few decades, and then getting angry because the neighborhood is changing. They want to act like they built those countries from nothing, when in reality, they built them on top of civilization that already existed. Civilization they destroyed to make space for themselves. And the wildest part is they built those white countries by importing non-white labor, enslaving people and moving populations around like cheese pieces. And now they want to pretend that they don't understand why diversity exists. Now, I'll go back to my continent, Africa. Let me talk about Africa diversity and the colonial map. Okay? And here is where I need my African kings and queens to pay close attention. Because the irony is that while they cry about diversity, Africa, our motherland, is the most ethnically diverse continent on earth. Okay? And that's not just because we are rich in cultures, language, and traditionals. That's also because Europe came in and engineered diversity inside our borders. So when Europeans met in Berlin back in, I think it's 1884, 1885 there, to carve up Africa, to divide Africa, they didn't draw borders based on existing kingdoms, clans, or alliances. They drew them based on European convenience, based on where they were colonizing, based on their own interests. You know, they drew the maps based on where resources were, where rivers flowed, where trade routes could be controlled, and they split communities down to the middle, forcing one half into one colony and the other half into another colony. They jammed rivals groups together under one administration, knowing full that it will create some tension, you know? And these borders were never meant to serve Africans. These borders were meant to serve Europe. Those borders in Africa, yes, that's reality. And there's something we call weaponization of diversity, okay? Here the game is, they didn't just create diversity in Africa, they weaponized it. They elevated certain ethnic groups over others in colonial administrations. They gave them better jobs, better education, and more political influence. For example, let's talk about what happened in Rwanda, the Tutsi and the Hutu. I don't want to go deeper in that because it's so painful, but it's what we call weaponizing of diversity, okay? All this they did because they wanted to divide and rule. It was a strategy to divide and conquer. And when they gave us independence, when they say independence has come, we inherited this, not just borders, but we inherited grudges, mistrusts, and the competition they had planted. I just give you an example of Rwanda. They create an environment where Tutsi and Hutu were not aligning together. And then when Rwanda got independence, they left power on the hands of one side. And when the other side got the power, it was too bad. It was too bad. Okay? So when they look at Africa today and try to point at conflicts as a sign of African failure, they are pointing at wounds they inflicted. They are pointing at wounds they created. One example that blows people's minds is when Germany literally swapped the island of Zanzibar for a strip of land in Namibia called the Capreville Strip, just so that they could get access to the Zambezi River. They traded African land like it was a baseball card. They traded African land just like it was a smoky. Like it has no people living on it, man. No history. Like it has no culture. And the people who lived there have been dealing with the consequences ever since. This is the mentality that created the modern world, treating land and people as resources to be moved, traded, and exploited. Now, when I talk about the tweet, when someone in 2025 complains about white countries being told to be diverse, they are willingly ignoring the fact that diversity is the boomerang of colonization, of colonialism. You can't spend centuries sailing to other continents, taking over other people's land, enslaving millions and building empires, and then act shocked when generation later the descendants of those same people live in your cities. Look through your mirror. Look on the mirror, man. This is the consequences of empire, the consequences of colonization. It is not a mystery. It is not an accident It is history playing itself. And this is why I tell my African and diaspora family that we must own our history. Not just the pain, not just owning the pain. We must own our history, the clarity, because once you understand that these white countries were never white to begin with, the whole narrative falls apart. You see that diversity is not an invention. It is the return of the world they tried to control. For Africans, this means we stop swallowing their lies about our supposed chaos and backwardness. We have to remember that much of what they call African problems were created by themselves. It is not problems that we created by ourselves. And for black people in the diaspora, this means that we stop buying into the myth that we are somehow outsiders in the lands where our ancestors build it with their own labor, build the wealth of these countries. And again, I'll say this. I played video of this second, the white lady when she was talking about the Red Summer, land theft, exclusion from the New Deal and redlining. And I'll say this. That conversation is very important because colonialism didn't just shape Africa and so-called white countries abroad. It shaped life for black people in America in ways that most history books either soften or they try to erase. For example, after World War I, American soldiers came home with pride, according to what the white lady said, and that's true. They come home with pride. They believed they had fought to protect democracy, to combat fascism, to make the world safe. Black soldiers came home with the same pride. They wore their uniforms, they stood tall, and they knew they had served with courage and sacrifice. But America did not greet them with pride, with parades and gratitudes. America greeted them with their wave of racial terror. The year 1919 became known as the Red Summer, and not because of flowers of sunsets. It was because it was red with blood of black men, women, and children murdered in the city after city by white mobs. In Chicago, a 13-day riot left 38 people dead and more than 500 injured. And it all began when a black teenager named Eugene Williams drifted on a raft into the white-only swimming areas. So instead of arresting the man who stoned him until he drowned, police turned their focus on black residents, especially when they defended themselves. In Washington, D.C., this on history books, so we need to read all this. In Washington, D.C., mobs that included off-duty soldiers and police roamed the streets, attacking black neighborhoods for days. In Airline and Kansas, somewhere between 100 and 200 black sharecroppers and their families were slaughtered. And their crime was just to organize for fair wages. So when black people fought, when they fought back, the system fought harder. Police arrested the defendants, not the attackers. Courts handed down death sentences to 12 black men, while the white killers walked free. And the violence did not stop there. You know, through the 1920s, 1930s, black farmers were systematically pushed off their land. Sometimes white mobs would force families to sign over deeds at gunpoints. You know, other times they would show up with a simple ultimatum: out of town by sundown. You know, they'll say, or we'll burn you out. Banks refused to loan black farmers and business owners, claiming that they were too risky. But the truth is, the risk they feared was the independence of black people. Because when you lend loans and they come economically fit, you become weak, they rise. That's what they fear. Generations of land, hard work, and economic foundation were stolen, leaving many families, black families, with nothing but survival as their own goal. Okay? I'll say this. When people say, why are white, or when someone asks why are white countries told to be diverse, understand this: we are living in the aftermath of a global system where white supremacy shaped borders, rewrote laws, denied access, and stole lands, whether in Africa, in Caribbean, or in the heart of America. The story is the same. They built their comfort on our exclusion. That's what I think. But I hope we have learned something on this. And I'm very grateful to these white people who are bringing out this information and telling out the truth. Even if they will be banished, they will be sent away. But at least it is time the truth is coming out from their own mouth. Okay? I'll say this. We need to be vigilant as black people. And as I always say, we need to be united because there's a shift that is happening in the world. Okay? Tell me what you think on the comment section. Until next video, peace out.